Hello everyone, welcome back to another card combo show with me, Chocobilly, where we look at the weird and wonderful card combinations in the Final Fantasy TCG. And this week I am looking at YUNA from Opus 20. So she is a 5 CP 8k, I was going to say 20k, where did that come from? 8k water forward with the text, when YUNA is chosen by your opponent's ability, you may discard one summon. When you do so, cancel its effect. And when you cast a summon, draw one card, this effect will trigger once per turn. And then finally she has the Holy S. Choose one forward, do it 3000 damage for each summon in your break zone. Right, yeah, I mean it's all pretty simple. She has some sort of nice protective ability. Getting a card off of every summon is really good as well. But obviously she is the sort of card you put in a deck that is completely stacked with summons, so you can keep her alive whilst also drawing lots of cards, and you know, you might even get her S off. So first up we have Fenrir. So choose one forward. Again, this forward cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons until the end of the turn. So you can either discard Fenrir for Yuna's effect so she doesn't get targeted by abilities, or you can cast Fenrir, draw a card, and then make it so she can't be targeted by summons. So either way, Fenrir in hand is very useful with Yuna. White Mage. So when you discard one or more cards due to summons or abilities, draw one card. This effect will trigger during your opponent's turn. So if your opponent targets Yuna with an ability during their turn, you can discard a summon to then obviously cancel that effect. But that will also trigger White Mage's effect as well to draw you a card. So, you know, if you hypothetically keep on drawing summons, you can discard as many summons as you draw through this effect and cancel that many abilities. Now bear in mind that with White Mage, it has to be part of the resolution of the effect that you discard rather than the cost. So an example would be something like Arisha Al-Rashir. Firstly, I think that's how you say it, but secondly, also I think that's the effect of the card. But you can discard a summon. If you do so, you search another summon. But the discarding of a summon is part of the cost, so before the semicolon, colon, I don't know, the two little dots. And yeah, so if the discarding of a card comes before the colon, then it doesn't trigger White Mage. If it comes afterwards, then it will trigger White Mage, as it is part of an effect. Man in Black. So obviously with Yuna, you're going to be, as I said before, playing a deck that is stacked with summons, and so using cards that can retrieve those summons or replay or benefit from having lots of summons as well, very useful. Now obviously the first thought in most people's minds would be the 3CP Wind Lulu, but I went Man in Black because ultimately Man in Black benefits again from the casting of summons. You can make it so things cannot attack or block, as well as drawing a card off of Yuna, but he also makes it so that you can recast summons from your break zone. And what I like about that as well is if you could hypothetically have a summon removed from game but still have 5 cards in hand, it means that you can cast a summon without affecting your hand. So yeah, it kind of gives a fake increase to your hand size with those summons removed, and it's every single time he attacks as well, so you keep on getting those summons back. And moreover, if Man in Black dies, you can still cast those summons, which is really good. Terra, so again, similarly capitalizing on the fact you've got lots of summons in the deck, but also capitalizing on casting summons. So when she enters the field, you may reveal any number of summons from your hand. When you do so, choose up to the same number of characters as summons you revealed, dull them, and freeze them. So yeah, obviously lots of summons in the deck. You play Terra, you reveal 3 or 4 summons, dull and freeze 3 or 4 characters. However, when you cast a summon, choose up to 1 forward and up to 1 backup, dull or freeze the former and dull or freeze the latter. So yeah, again, you get to draw a card off of Yuna and you get to dull and freeze stuff potentially. Now, this also works really nice with a card that I actually run a lot with this Terra, which is Shiva from Opus 15. So choose one forward and up to 1 other forward. Dull the former if you have 2 or more card named Shiva in your break zone. Also dull the latter if you have 4 or more, freeze them. If you have 6 or more, also your opponent discards 2 cards from their hand. So Shiva looks at your break zone to see how many Shivas there are and then increases the effects depending on that. So with a card like Yuna, where you will be discarding summons to be able to make it so she isn't targeted by abilities, works nicely with the Shiva. And again, lots of summons, lots of Shivas. The Shiva likes lots of Shivas, so you can see where the synergy comes in there. Kryl. So when Yuna says you get to draw a card, it doesn't matter whose summoner it is. So you can use Kryl to cast summons from your opponent's break zone, at which point you still get to draw a card off it, which is quite nice, as well as removing that summon from your opponent's break zone, as well as you casting it. Bear in mind that you do have to pay the correct element for the summon you're casting. So if you play Kryl onto the field and you target an Asura in your opponent's break zone, you have to pay the wind to be able to cast it. Now, with Kryl, it's probably best to run something like Kimari, because he generates any of the elements of the characters your opponent controls. So if they have wind characters, you can pay the wind with Kimari to cast the Asura. Also fits nicely within the 10 theme with YUNA, so it might be that you've got a little 10 synergy in there as well. Obviously, within Earth for Kryl, you will have stuff like Tyro, Ketchi, so there's other ways to be able to generate those elements, but Kimari is probably the cheapest and most reliable way to be able to generate your opponent's elements as well. Rydia. Just cast the summons for free. Why not? And then you get a card off it. So yeah, casting stuff from your hand for free and also adding to your hand from YUNA's effect is just really, really good. But these two elements, water and earth, fit nicely into the new Cecil engine as well. So you've got the Dark Knight Cecil, put them into the break zone to then search and play a Cecil onto the field. You can play, again, either the new water Cecil or it could be the wind Cecil, it doesn't really matter, but ultimately all ways to be able to increase Rydia's counters to then be able to cast even bigger summons for free. Aiko. So, dull 3 active job summoner. Cast 1 summon of cost 7 or less from your hand without paying its cost. So, let's say you've got Aiko, YUNA, and maybe the Braska backup on the field to reduce the cost of these 2 cards. You dull those 3, cast a summon, get a card off of YUNA. Not too shabby, and obviously if there's a summon of 7 or less, probably going to be a substantial summon. So something like Remora is really, really good. So, aside from the fact this card is an EX burst, which is disgusting, even just playing Remora straight up without Aiko is incredibly beneficial because you're probably going to kill something and get cards to hand. But yeah, choose 1 4, draw 1 card, then until the end of the turn it loses 2000 power for each card in your hand. So you would cast Remora, and then you draw a card off of YUNA, you then draw a card off of Remora, and then you get to minus 2k for each card in your hand. So if you after you've cast Remora, you have 3 cards left in hand. After YUNA and Remora have resolved, you'll finish with 5. You get to minus 10k something. Pretty good. And yeah, dulling Aiko, YUNA, and again, or just dulling a couple of backups and maybe Aiko, something like that, just to be able to cast this Remora, again, effectively for free is really good. And the good thing about that as well is with Remora, you obviously want to keep those cards in hand, but it being a 6 CP summon means that even if you had 5 backups, you'd have to dull 2 backups and then either discard a card from hand to cast Remora or use some other kind of summon cost reduction. But yeah, you want to basically keep as many cards in hand as you can for Remora. Leviathan, my Opus 14 spoiler. Again, a disgustingly good card because it's EX burst. You get to get water cards back from your back from your break zone, and then also bounce your opponents forwards. So it's got recursion, it's removal, and it's EX. Really, really good card. But again, combine that with YUNA where you get to draw a card as well, utilizing Aiko, casting it for free. It's really strong. And next up we have White Mage. Your opponent targets YUNA with an ability, you then break White Mage to get a summon back from your break zone, discard said summon to cancel the effect. Simple as, really. Next up, Simon. So, obviously he can choose a category FFT card. Now, there are a few cards in the game that can just get a card back from the break zone. I think there's a Tama for WoF. There's a few others, I think. But ultimately, it's an element, so you can use Simon to then get back, I don't know, Fairy? Is that Fairy's one? There are loads of FFT summons. It depends what elements you're in. If you're just water, you're kind of limited on the summons you can get back from that. But again, if you're running other FFT cards, so maybe you're running a Princess engine, so you can get back your Agrias to then play that onto the field as well, if you've got Ovalia. So, there's quite a few different ways that you can utilize this card, not just only focusing on YUNA, but ultimately if you're discarding summons to use YUNA's effect, make sure that they're FFT cards. That way Simon can get them back for only a break. The Fiend, so this is again more focusing on the defensive properties of YUNA, because she can only protect herself through from abilities using summons, but with the Fiend, during each turn, when your opponent casts a summon for the first time in that turn, cancel its effect. So your opponent, if they want to get rid of YUNA, would have to cast 2 summons. So yeah, just using the Fiend makes everyone's life hell, right? Now, Rose is a funny way to kind of capitalize on this as well. So if your opponent were to cast a summon, let's go with, I don't know, Odin for 5 CP to break a forward of 5 CP, right? With Fiend on the field, it will get cancelled. However, them casting that summon, they still have to make the choice. So they would have to choose, they would probably choose, actually they might choose for Fiend to be fair, but it doesn't actually matter if you've got Rosa, so yeah, they have to choose something. Rosa triggers whenever forward you control is chosen by your opponent's summon, you may draw a card. So it just means that having Fiend on the field along with Rosa means that even though yes, YUNA technically isn't protected, you still have other means of getting cards to your hand, which then could be, summon cancelling cards. Sorry, I had to think about that. Or it could just be, just more things to be able to utilize YUNA. But either way, Fiend and Yuna's pretty disgusting. Rose is just funny if they do start trying to cast summons on your Yuna as well. Garnet. Yeah, so when you cast a summon, place one summon counter on Garnet. Simple as, and then you can remove that to give plus 2k to a forward. So again, potentially a way to be able to save your Yuna, but obviously this focuses on you got a stacked deck or a deck stacked of summons. So having Garnet, you probably have like 3 or 4 summons in your hand, with a hand of 5. Dull Garnet, randomly reveal a card. Chances are it's going to be a summon, cast it for free. If it's one of those big summons like Remora or Leviathan 6 CP, that's pretty good considering what we've done as dollar forward. And with Yuna, you get to draw a card as well, so it just makes sense. Volker, so again, kind of utilizing the stacked deck, but also focusing on getting those summons into the break zone. So yeah, I mean, everyone knows what Volker does. You can discard a water summon, and then you can either she cannot be chosen by opponent's summons or abilities, so actually kind of like a better version of Yuna's effect. But then you can choose one forward and one backup, activate them, or choose one water summon. Choose one forward of cost 4 as opponent controls, return to his owner's hand. So you can be getting those summons into the break zone. And this is actually the perfect example actually of what I was talking about with White Mage earlier. If you were using Volker's effect with White Mage on the field during your opponent's turn, it wouldn't trigger because discard one water summon comes before colon. If it came afterwards, then it would trigger it, but it doesn't. But yeah, just getting summons into the break zone. Either way, just you've got to treat your deck in the situation where Yuna isn't on the field, right? So having Volker there, still loads of summons, can be utilized to then bounce things, protect things, reactivate things, whatever. Yunalesca, so you got Yuna and Yunalesca on the field. Your summons now cost 2 less, which is pretty good, to be honest. And then obviously when she enters the field, choose one summon your break zone, place it at the bottom of your deck. So it means you get to at least kind of refill your deck a little bit, and with Yuna, probably going to be discarding summons. Une. So, fun fact, I think, I could be wrong here, but I think Yuna and Une is the first instance of an S ability being reused. Now, it's only in name, because obviously the effects are completely different, but they're both holy. So, there you go. Might be the first instance of 2 S's being the same. So, yeah, this is focusing more on Une's effect. So, when Une enters the field, choose 2 summons, each with a different cost in the break zone. Your opponent selects 1, summon among them. You may cast the other summon without paying the cost. If you cast it, remove from the game. So you are removing that summon, but ultimately you're casting probably any summon. So if you were to choose, I don't know, they have to be obviously 2 different elements, but 2 different costs. So you can't choose Remora and 6 CP Leviathan, but still, you can choose 2 horrible summons to be able to cast potentially for free. Now, obviously, Une is Earth, Ice, and Yuna's Water, so you're either in Tricolor or you're probably utilizing the Earth side of it to pay either the Ice for Une or the Water for Yuna. Either way, it just fits nicely because you get to cast something for free probably. Now your opponent obviously gets to dictate that, but you get to choose at least 2 of the summons in the break zone. With Yuna, you'll be discarding lots of summons, so hopefully there will be some good options in there. Again, Une. This is stupid, but I wanted to put in there just because. So, Yuna on the field, cast a summon, flicker, draw a card off of Yuna, but also flicker Yuna, she enters the field, cast another summon, get to draw another card, because it is technically a new instance of Yuna on the field, which means that it will then trigger the once per turn, it will trigger the cast a summon, draw a card, because even though it can only be used once per turn, that's tied to that instance of that card. So if you can remove the card, replay it back onto the field, you get to draw a card again. Stupid, like I said, with no real benefit, but fun nonetheless. Maya. So, haste, cannot attack or block, but you can dull her, cast one summon from your hand. The cost required to cast it is reduced by 3 and can be paid using CP of any element. So, potentially nice for being able to cast something off of color, whatever. Oh yeah, and also remove that summon from the game after use instead of putting it into the break zone. So that is the one downside here, is that if you're using lots of summon recursion, that summon is gone forever. So bear that in mind. But ultimately, being able to, if Maya survives more than one turn, being able to repeatedly use her to reduce the cost of your summons, and let's say you've got Maya on the field with Yuna and you dull her, and you cast Remora, for 3. That's pretty good. And again, hopefully that will allow you to keep more cards in hand for Remora's effect. Again, Maya probably won't stick around for very long, but still, just even once is fine, because if you consider Maya is a card out of hand, 2 CP, and then she's only cost 1, that's 3 CP in total, and she reduces the cost of the summon by 3. So at the very least, given the fact that she has haste, you can still use her effect if she dies immediately, you still get that 3 CP accounted to a summon of some sort. Just when you played Maya, probably want to cast a summon immediately, just to make sure that you're getting that value out of her. But again, with a deck like YUNA and Maya as well, probably going to be a stacked deck. Summoner. I love this card. It was one of my favorite cards in the game. Mostly just due to the art. I think it's beautiful. But ultimately, you can dull, cast on summoner cost 2 or less from your hand without paying the cost. Not really that relevant anymore because it ultimately is a 3 CP backup as well, which is a tough sell these days. But if you're paying just 1 CP to cast a 2 CP summon and it's giving you more cards to hand through YUNA, and there's also the summons you can be cast. I mean, there's lots of summons, and ultimately it can not color fix, but it can cast summons of any element. So could be casting, I don't know, Brynhilde or Ixion from mining, I don't know. But yeah, just something to kind of take your opponent by surprise, maybe. Leviathan, so a few summons that really do utilize YUNA well. So choose one forward if its cost is equal to or less than the number of cards in your hand, return to its owner's hand. So you cast Leviathan, you get to draw a card off of YUNA, and then Leviathan resolves, checking the amount of cards in your hand. So it means that utilizing YUNA, you get 1 additional card, and Leviathan is more likely to bounce something. Poo-poo. Yes, I am a juvenile that laughs at that name. Discard 1 card, then draw 2 cards. With YUNA, draw another card, so you get 3 cards to hand. Yes, you have to discard one of them, but still. And oh yeah, if you do cast Poo-poo and you've got no cards on hand, you can't discard anything, but you can draw 3. That's why Poo-poo, in some cases, is better than Moogle, I think it is, which makes you draw 2 cards and discard 1. Obviously, it depends because you can draw 2, and then one of those 2 cards you drew, you may not like and then want to discard that one, but ultimately you can use Poo-poo on an empty hand to just go straight up to 3 cards, which is pretty strong. Kuchulain. Choose one forward until the turn it loses 1,000 power for each card in your hand. If its powers become 0 or less by the previous effect, draw a card. So kind of the reverse of Remora. You get the draw card after the effect, but it has to have killed something. Now, you would need a lot of cards in hand for Kuchulain to be able to kill something. Again, like the Leviathan, YUNA will draw you the card, and then that card will count towards Kuchulain's effect because it's a resolution. So it would go Kuchulain stacks, then YUNA stacks, draw your card, Kuchulain resolves, count how many cards you're on hand, minus however much. But utilizing it alongside something like Lulu, so you cast Kuchulain, set something to 5k, draw a card off of YUNA, you now are far more likely to kill something because you need 5 cards in hand. So it could be that Kuchulain was your 5th card, but then you draw a card off of YUNA, puts you to 5 cards in hand, Lulu sets something to 5, you kill the forward, you get to draw another card. Not too shabby. And that is YUNA. She's got some really cool combos, and something I haven't really tried out much yet. But yeah, she's a lot of fun. And I can't even believe that we're actually on the precipice of Opus 21 now. And I'm really looking forward to it because I am a massive fan of Stranger of Paradise. So seeing that get some support is really good. And most of the cards so far look pretty good, to be honest. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, let me know what you guys have played with YUNA. Have you just put her in just a deck stacked with summons? I mean, that's pretty much all you can do with her at this point. Like what kind of builds have you put her in with Earth Water, maybe utilizing Rydia and Cryle, or maybe Fire using Braska? Who knows? But yeah, let me know what you guys have put her with in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, or at the very least subscribe, because it is a massive benefit to the channel and really makes a world of difference. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Stay safe, be lucky, and I'll see you in the next video.